The U.S. government is officially closed for business. Agencies are frozen. Millions of federal workers are facing furloughs. National parks, immigration services, food assistance programs, tax refunds, all grinding to a halt. And the reason? A brutal, ego-driven standoff that exploded into full-blown shutdown on October 1st, 2025. This is not just political theater. This is a direct result of how President Donald J. Trump governs, with confrontation, not compromise. Before we continue, do not forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Now in his second term, Trump is no stranger to using shutdowns as political leverage. But this time, the stakes are even higher. He refused to sign any budget that didn't slash domestic spending, eliminate key Democratic policies, and include expanded immigration enforcement. When Senate Democrats pushed back, offering a funding bill that preserved health subsidies and basic programs, Trump dug in hard. And here's where it gets controversial. Multiple reports from Capitol Hill say Trump told GOP lawmakers to stand firm or step aside. This wasn't negotiation. It was a declaration of political war. And when both parties failed to pass their competing bills, America went dark. So, what's really going on here? Is this about protecting taxpayers, or feeding Trump's need for control? Is Congress broken, or just bullied into paralysis? In this video, we're cutting through the spin to get to the truth. What caused this shutdown? How does it affect ordinary Americans? And why does it feel like we've seen this movie before? The headlines say it's about money, but the evidence says otherwise. This isn't just a budget fight, it's a power play. And the American people are caught in the crossfire. Let's break it all down. On the surface, the U.S. government shutdown began like so many others. A funding deadline missed, partisan finger-pointing, and a flurry of failed late-night negotiations. But this time, the details tell a much deeper and more dangerous story. Here's what actually happened. As the September 30th deadline approached, Senate Democrats introduced a full-year funding bill. It included extended healthcare subsidies, disaster relief, education programs, and climate initiatives. They framed it as a responsible continuation of basic governance. President Trump and House Republicans immediately rejected it. Trump labeled it radical left spending, and his allies in the House called it a Democrat wish list. In response, they proposed a 30-day stopgap bill, but with sweeping demands, rollbacks on Biden-era regulations, immigration crackdowns, and significant cuts to domestic programs. Senate Democrats refused to play along. They saw the stopgap bill as a political weapon, not a real budget proposal. As the clock ticked down, both chambers went into crisis mode, but the outcome was already decided. Negotiations stalled. No bill passed. On October 1st, the government shut down. But here's the critical part. This wasn't just legislative dysfunction. It was orchestrated. Sources from within the GOP say President Trump was personally involved in pressuring lawmakers to reject compromise. He reportedly told allies that shutdowns show strength, and warned them not to hand Democrats a win, even if it meant closing the government. For Trump, this was about narrative, not numbers. Moderate Republicans who expressed concerns were silenced or smeared as weak. Trump's loyalists in the House blocked bipartisan efforts, framing the shutdown as a fight against corruption and waste. And Trump? He's proudly owning it. He's calling this a necessary stand, and blaming Democrats for refusing to negotiate with America first. The Senate, caught between politics and responsibility, couldn't break the deadlock. And just like that, federal agencies shut their doors. This wasn't a spontaneous breakdown. It was a coordinated siege, led by a president who sees shutdowns not as failures, but as strategy. And while Trump tests loyalty, everyday Americans face delayed paychecks, closed offices, and stalled services. This is how power plays out, in silence and shutdowns. While Washington argues real people suffer, government shutdowns aren't just about politics. They have deep, painful consequences for millions of Americans. Let's start with the basics. Over 2 million federal workers are impacted. Around 850,000 are now furloughed or working without pay. That means TSA agents, air traffic controllers, FBI agents, National Park Rangers, and even some active-duty military personnel are either sitting at home without paychecks or expected to work for free. These people aren't political pawns. They're your neighbors, your family members, your community. They still have rent to pay, groceries to buy, and children to feed. Right now, they're doing it on savings, credit cards, or nothing at all. But it doesn't stop there. Federal contractors, janitors, cafeteria staff, IT workers, many of whom live paycheck to paycheck, are also out of work. And unlike government employees, most of them won't see back pay. That paycheck? Gone. And the services Americans rely on? Slowing to a crawl or vanishing altogether. Head Start classrooms are closing, displacing kids and straining working parents. WIC offices are turning away low-income mothers and infants who rely on basic nutrition support. Passport applications are stalled. Small business loans? Frozen. VA claims? Delayed. In many rural areas, tribal health clinics and schools that depend on federal funds are now running out of resources. And what about disasters? FEMA's operations are now partially frozen, which means if a hurricane, flood, or wildfire strikes, response will be delayed or reduced. In the middle of hurricane season, that's terrifying. National parks have shut down or been left unstaffed. That might sound minor, but it hits local economies hard. Hotels, restaurants, tour operators, all losing income. And unstaffed parks quickly turn into safety hazards and environmental messes. Even agencies that are technically funded, like Social Security and Medicare, are feeling the heat. Claims are backlogged. Customer service is slower. Critical systems are vulnerable to error when key personnel are missing. Meanwhile, federal labs are pausing research. Environmental inspections are skipped. Food safety checks, yes, even those, are reduced. And let's be clear, none of this was inevitable. This isn't a response to a financial crash or an international crisis. It's the manufactured result of political warfare, ego and power games, with working Americans caught in the crossfire. The people responsible for this mess won't miss a meal. But for a single parent working for the IRS or a Coast Guard officer waiting for their paycheck, this is terrifying. Shutdowns aren't abstract, they're personal, and the longer it drags on, the more real the damage becomes. Before we continue, do not forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. So why did the government really shut down? If you listen to Trump, he'll tell you it was about fiscal discipline and draining the swamp. If you ask Democrats, they'll say it was sabotage, pure and simple. But the real story lies in the mechanics, the maneuvering, and the mindset behind the chaos. Let's break it down. In late September 2025, with the fiscal year closing in, Senate Democrats introduced a full-year funding package. It was designed to keep federal agencies open, extend healthcare subsidies, maintain disaster relief, and continue basic operations. It was imperfect, sure, but it was workable. Trump, now deep into his second term and backed by a MAGA-dominated House, slammed the bill. His team called it bloated, reckless, and woke. More importantly, Trump saw an opportunity, not for negotiation, but domination. Behind closed doors, he reportedly told GOP lawmakers to reject everything, unless it included his list of demands, major cuts to domestic programs, funding for a renewed border wall push, and rollbacks on environmental and diversity-related spending. It wasn't just a budget battle, it was a loyalty test. In response, House Republicans put forward a short-term 30-day funding bill, but it was loaded with poison pills, defunding DEI initiatives, gutting green energy programs, and slashing social safety nets. It wasn't meant to pass. It was meant to force Democrats into looking like the bad guys. The Senate didn't bite. Democrats refused to fund what they called a political wish list disguised as governance. With no middle ground, the deadline passed. The government shut down. But here's where the truth sharpens. Trump wanted this. According to multiple insiders, he saw the shutdown as a way to reignite the MAGA movement, to show that he could bring Washington to its knees with a single tweet. He viewed the crisis as leverage, pressure, power. Moderate Republicans who flirted with compromise quickly fell in line after facing online threats, primary warnings, and public rebukes from MAGA media figures. Even experienced legislators, once respected for bipartisanship, went silent. Meanwhile, Trump doubled down. He went on national TV, blaming Democrats for trying to bankrupt America, and claiming the shutdown was a defense of the working class. But federal workers, including veterans and first responders, weren't buying it. They were living the consequences. This wasn't about the budget. It was about optics. Trump wanted the win, not the work. He wasn't leading from the Oval Office. He was ruling from a stage. And millions of Americans became collateral damage in a political power play. Every time the government shuts down, the blame game begins. Republicans point to Democrats. Democrats point to Republicans. Social media explodes. Cable news debates rage. But here's the hard truth. Both sides played a role. Yet one man steered the ship straight into the iceberg. Let's start with Congress. They failed. Again. The Senate and House couldn't compromise on their most basic duty, keeping the government funded. That's dysfunction, plain and simple. Elected officials let partisan warfare freeze a functioning government. Moderates stayed quiet. Leaders avoided the hard choices. Everyone waited for someone else to act. But the deeper problem lies with Trump. This wasn't gridlock. It was intentional gridlock. Unlike past shutdowns caused by impasses or unresolvable differences, this one was manufactured. Trump didn't just insert himself into the process, he took over the playbook. He demanded strict compliance from House Republicans and warned against caving to Democrats. Lawmakers were told, loyalty to Trump or risk your political life. Compromise wasn't just discouraged. It was treated as betrayal. This wasn't leadership. It was domination. Trump turned the funding process into a campaign rally, using crisis as a tool to prove his grip on the party. And it worked. Republicans fell in line. Some even boasted about standing firm, even as their constituents were hurt. To be fair, Democrats held the line. But critics argue they could have budged slightly to keep the lights on. A temporary deal, a symbolic concession, might have bought time. But many believed yielding to Trump would send the wrong message, that you can win by wrecking the system. And that's the tragedy. America isn't caught between two parties. It's caught between one that's fractured and one that's being hijacked by a single personality. Congress failed in execution, but Trump engineered the collapse. He didn't just let the shutdown happen. He wanted it to happen, as proof of his dominance. So yes, blame Congress, but understand this. Trump lit the fuse, and he's watching the fire from the top floor. Every government shutdown leaves a mark. On the economy, on government morale, and most of all, on politics. But this one? It's already rewriting the 2026 campaign playbook. Let's talk about the GOP first. Trump has emerged from this shutdown emboldened. He got what he wanted, a display of total control. House Republicans bent to his will. Even skeptics went quiet. In the eyes of his base, Trump didn't just shut down the government, he reminded everyone who's boss. But outside the MAGA bubble, things aren't so certain. Independent voters, especially suburban moderates, are paying attention. And many are frustrated. They see a president who's more focused on political showdowns than real solutions. If this perception sticks, it could haunt Republican candidates in battleground states and swing districts. Then there's the Democrats. They've positioned themselves as the last adults in the room, responsible, steady, and unwilling to cave to political extortion. Senate leaders have framed the shutdown as a MAGA-made crisis. That message resonates with progressives and independents alike, for now. But time is dangerous. The longer the government stays closed, the more the narrative shifts from Trump caused this to everyone in DC is useless. And that apathy is fatal in midterms. Inside the Republican Party, fault lines are deepening. Traditional conservatives, especially in the Senate, are growing increasingly uneasy. Some are calling for rules changes to prevent shutdowns. Others are quietly building post-Trump strategies. This shutdown didn't just test party loyalty. It cracked open internal fractures that could explode in 2026. Meanwhile, Trump's machine is running full speed. He's raising money, dominating media cycles, and flooding social platforms with anti-Democrat messaging. Every rally, every post, turns the shutdown into campaign fuel. But it's a gamble. If Americans feel the economic pain long enough, missed mortgage payments, delayed social security checks, closed schools. Trump's base may stay loyal, but the broader electorate might not. The public might start asking, was this really worth it? This isn't just political fallout. It's a referendum on power. And in 2026, voters will decide who passed the test and who burned the country down to prove a point. Could this happen again? Absolutely. In fact, it's already happening more often. And that's the scariest part. Government shutdowns used to be rare. They were viewed as dramatic signs of systemic failure. But now, they're being normalized, turned into strategic political tools rather than national emergencies. And the 2025 shutdown might be the blueprint for what's to come. Here's the pattern. Provoke a crisis, assign blame, rally your base, raise money, then repeat. That's not governing. It's political warfare disguised as fiscal responsibility. And why wouldn't politicians do it again? The incentives are all wrong. Media attention skyrockets. Campaign donations pour in. Social media engagement explodes. And the voters most affected, the ones missing paychecks and services, are often left out of the conversation. What makes this dangerous isn't just that it happened, it's that it worked. At least for Trump and his loyalists. He seized the narrative, proved his dominance, and faced no real consequences from within his party. Unless Congress enacts structural reforms, like automatic continuing resolutions that keep the government funded during disputes, shutdowns may become a seasonal spectacle. And each time it happens, the damage deepens, trust erodes, institutions weaken, cynicism grows, and the idea of responsible governance fades further from reality. This isn't just dysfunction, it's becoming a feature, not a flaw. So the question isn't, could this happen again? It's, what happens when the next one lasts longer and hurts more? So here we are again. The government is shut down. Millions are affected. And Americans are once again stuck watching a political system grind itself into chaos, while everyday people pay the price. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't just bad leadership. It was a deliberate choice, driven by ego, partisanship, and a total lack of accountability. Trump got what he wanted: attention, control, and loyalty. Congress, meanwhile, failed in its basic duty. And the result? Federal workers unpaid, services frozen, trust shattered. But this doesn't have to be normal. Shutdowns aren't inevitable. They're the outcome of a political culture that rewards conflict over compromise. And if voters don't push back, this will keep happening, again and again. So what can you do? Call your representatives. Demand real reform. Speak up when power plays come at the expense of public service. And don't forget this moment the next time you vote. Because democracy doesn't just disappear. It gets ignored, it gets gamed, and then it gets lost. Thanks for watching. If this video gave you insight, perspective, or just made you think, like, comment, and subscribe. We've got more to uncover, and silence is how the system stays broken.